Good morning. It is time once again for the Morning Mindset. I want to ask you to do a favor for me right now. Look at the app where you are listening to the Morning Mindset. If you're listening on a smart device, that is. And you can swipe right, left, up, down somehow and find the description for this episode. Right there, you'll see two links. You can click on either of those links to find out more about the subjects that it indicates, but you also can use those links to contact me. You'll find a contact page there somewhere. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how the Morning Mindset is impacting you and helping you in your journey. I hear from people quite often, 3 or 4 a week at this time. I would love to hear from more because there's over 8,000 people listening per day. That's incredible to me. I never imagined this Morning Mindset would become that widespread, and I would encourage you to share it with others yourself. Well, we are wrapping up the book of Romans, chapter 8 this morning, and we're down to verses 38 and 39, and the Apostle Paul has just told us this entire list of things that are unable to separate us from the love of God. And the first that he says in the list is life nor death. Think about that. He says, neither life nor death can separate me from the love of God. So one of the things we fear the most is death. When someone dies, it's one of the most tragic and sad things in our existence. When we are facing death, it's one of the most fearful times. And it's fearful mainly because there's this feeling of unknown. What's going to happen? Is it going to be painful? Are we going to suffer? All of those kinds of questions enter our mind. But notice what the Apostle Paul is trying to get us to understand here. As horrible as death is, it cannot separate us from the love of God. You see, often we connect the feeling of love and the thought of someone loving us to a happy circumstance. And we think if they love us, they will bring happy circumstances into our lives as best they're able. But you see, sometimes that's not the case, right? If you're a parent, you understand this. There are times when you have to discipline your child. There are times when you allow circumstances into their lives that aren't necessarily pleasant, simply because you love them. You see, there's something from that circumstance that they need to experience for their good, for their long-term benefit. And you see, for all of us, it's appointed that we will die because of the entrance of sin into the world. That is something that God allowed to come into the history of humanity. It's not something outside his control that caught him off guard and made him say, oops. You see, God is in entire control of this thing we call death. He's appointed the very day that each of us will pass on from this life. And the Apostle Paul is telling us he is sure that death cannot separate us from the love of God. Isn't that great news? There's an assurance there that when the time comes for us as believers in Christ to face our own mortality up close and personal, we know that just on the other side is life everlasting. Now, it's interesting for us to also notice here that Paul says, neither death nor life can separate us. So even this life and the things it brings to us, whether it's joyful things, great experiences, or difficult things, they cannot separate us from God's love. So you might think of it as we are in this bubble. We're inside the shield of God's love. And nothing that comes into our lives really penetrates that shield. It's like we're a sponge soaked in the love of God. And so no matter where you put that sponge, be it on a countertop or in a bucket or in a car or in a prison cell or even in a grave, it is still saturated with the love of God. Isn't that an amazing thought? That the love of God is pervasive in our lives? You never go anywhere that you are beyond the love of God? No matter what you experience, no matter what it is that's going on in your life right now, the love of God is there for you right now. Turn to him in faith. Turn to him like the Apostle Paul here with certainty to be sure that the love of God is yours right now. That's an act of your will. It's an act of receiving the truth of God. Receive it today, my friends, and let's talk again tomorrow.